governance meeting to order. And good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
And so we were going to talk about conflict of interest policy, but that was Mr. Pinkston's particular issue. So we'll table that and see if he comes in before the meeting ends. And we will move to, and did we have the person from Metro Government here? Oh, hi. Okay, good. Okay, good. That's great. So we'll move to the district water testing discussion. So this was a policy that we had agreed on and that we pulled for further discussion. And I believe the conversation was that we would consider modifying this or discuss modifying this to reflect the practices that we have. And so I wanted to, and so the current policy is in there as of January 3rd. This was already, what is this? This says revised 2019, January 3rd.
So, yeah, so as a sort of a matter of historical record, the piece that you see under policies and procedures, water testing x.xxx.xp is not really our policy, it's our administrative procedure
Practices.
around
Gotcha.
this.
Gotcha.
So,
I gotcha.
so because of a state law that changed, we are now required to have a board-approved policy, and I think one could easily make the argument that because this is what we're doing, this is a board-approved policy and structure, but to codify it a little more deeply, we reached back to our partners at the School Board Association who furnished us with their model policy, which came before you a couple weeks ago, and we decided to push it to now to have further discussion about what should mirror what and what this language should entail. So that's why we're here.
Right. So does anybody want to, any discussion about this? Amy, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I
there?
know you and I had a little discussion.
If you could grab the mic,
Oh,
Ms.
sorry.
Frogden.
There we go.
Actually, it's not
Oh, yeah.
mine. Yeah, I just think that we need, or what our policy should, our board policy should be the same as our administrative procedure, and I think that we also need to mirror the agreement that we made with the mayor's office. So I guess that would, and I don't have this in front of me, but I guess it would change 15 parts per billion to 5 parts per billion. I don't know, we'd have to go through this.
Well, I think, Ms. Frog, I think what we'd wind up doing is taking Section A, and by what you're saying there, Section A probably in Section B, and cutting out the lines 7 through 16 of the TSBA model policy and dropping that in. I think there's been some concerns expressed around just a straight copy paste and what kind of bind that could potentially put us in. I've asked Ken Stark to be available for us today, and I think Ken's here who sort of oversees that division of our work. And so I think he could maybe help us address and maybe give us even a little more historic background on sort of how we got here and what would be the best policy moving forward, and how we might incorporate some visions from some others, maybe those that are involved in water, like Public Works or Health or even the Mayor's Office might be a good team players to help us on this. But I would,
Okay.
if it pleases you, I would like to ask Ken to maybe come up and say a few things.
Good afternoon. Not quite sure where to start with this. Just to kind of refresh where we're at, we started doing lead testing well in advance of the state requirements, and we had moved to the 5 parts per billion standard. Gosh, it's been over a year ago now after meeting with Dr. Areola, and so we had moved to that.
So can I ask you a question? So why did so what we were doing was what the mayor was asking us to do?
No, ma'am, we were doing it before the mayor got
I
involved.
mean, so he was kind of reiterating we should do what we're already doing?
Yeah, so I think there was, as we went through that, the spring of 18, there was a lot of confusion and there was a lot of media attention about exactly what we were doing. So we, at that point, what we really did was clarify what the district was doing in terms of, we had set the 5 parts per billion threshold, what our testing protocol was, what our follow-up protocol was. All of those things were put in place, and I don't want to say codified, but we kind of memorialized them in that document that came out in July of 18.
Okay.
Just to provide a little bit of context, the water thing is a little bit tricky because we are dependent on Metro Water for what we get. We're fortunate in that the water that we're getting from all of our testing, and we've conducted thousands and thousands of samples, is very clean. We're getting, we're not having Flint, Michigan kind of lead coming into the buildings. That doesn't mean that it's completely lead-free, but that it's well within standards, and we can get to that 5 parts per billion standard across the district without too much trouble. Not that it isn't some trouble and doesn't have some cost, but it's not outrageous. There are things beyond our control that could impact that. If Metro Water had an issue in their service lines or a chemical issue in their service lines, it gets a little complicated with how the chemical reaction with the piping and how the lead gets into the water. But it's conceivable that we could get water coming in that's in excess of that 5 parts per billion level, but still within the guidelines that drinking water systems have to comply with at 15 parts per billion.
So what is the Metro water standard?
The public drinking water standard systems have a 15 parts per billion standard. The same standard that is in the new law that schools now have to comply with is the same standards that drinking water systems have to comply with.
So I think the natural tension comes in this when it is conceivable, though not foreseeable, that we could be getting water that's higher than 5 that we have no control over, correct? So the natural outgrowth of having a full school system full of, let's just pick a number, 12 parts per billion, less than the threshold of 15, but higher than the internal threshold that we would set. If we had 12 part per billion water coming in as a general rule, then we would have no choice, but we wouldn't be able to operate, right? So we would have to send kids home to drink 12 part per billion water, instead of having them stay in our school and potentially drink 6 part per billion water, which we were able to maybe get it down to. That's just one scenario. So I say it's just not, in my mind, as quick and easy as just dropping that in. I think we've got to have some sort of recognition that we are not in charge of processing and creating our own water system, and would like to work with some other agencies potentially around finding some language that's mutually beneficial.
Go ahead.
So since we seem to be at the mercy of whatever water supply we get, or we're at the mercy of the city, what has Mayor Briley or his office said about this? I mean, are they willing to work with us and either change either the way they fund the water supply filters for the entire city, or the way they fund outward filtration, or I don't know, just what would this look like?
We really haven't had that level of conversation. The conversations really were more around what could we control. And based on our early sample results and our meetings with Dr. Ariola, we felt pretty good about getting to the 5. So we weren't pressing the issue at that point. I mean, keep in mind, we were looking for something that was way better than the existing standard. It wasn't an obligation. This was our aspirational, here's where we're trying to get to, proactive approach. It kind of takes a little bit different flavor, the conversations do, when we think we can get here and let's aim for this versus you must get here, if that makes sense.
Lenny.
Okay, so I am not an expert on lead and water, and I know there are all these different standards, and I know that 5 is where we want to be. And I understand what you're saying about Metro Water. I've been told that Metro Water really, even though that may be their highest possible level, they really are more around 0, so that's not a typical scenario. And I think in general, there are things we can do. It's a cost concern with filters or that kind of thing. So I guess my tendency, and I've been thinking about it since our last meeting, is just to still try to stick with the very lowest, whatever the best recommendation is for children, with the recognition that there may be some unlikely scenario, like you said, where we're going to be in a position where we might have to supplement with filters or something like that, but it's unlikely. And I'm open to having this discussion because, again, I'm not an expert on lead, but I think if it's something we're already implementing, which is awesome, I mean, I think we have a much more stringent standard than other districts. I think I would love to see us continue with that in policy. But anyway, I want to acknowledge your concerns, but I don't think I think the Metro Water was just not typically at 15 parts per billion.
We
right?
would agree with you, and of course, the safest is 0, right?
Yeah.
And I think we also need to acknowledge, and we haven't had a discussion about anything except lead. There's a lot of other things that could be in water that can be harmful to us, right? Our discussion has been specifically around lead, and you know that's another issue potentially for another day. We're talking about lead levels today, but we trust Metro Water. They are great partners. They service us. I mean, we're all drinking it, right? And we're proud of their work, and they're proud of their work. I would like to have some more time, frankly, to work on this a little bit, and I would like this body's blessing to reach out to some of our partners, maybe some that I mentioned that we already talked about Metro Health, Public Works, potentially the mayor's office, since they've already been involved in this, would probably want to have some discussion, and in our operations division, and get us together and let us come back potentially in a couple of weeks if we can make the calendars work for all of them as well. Right now, though, we need to rest assured that everybody is doing well. It's not like we're at some astronomical lead level. We're the gold standard right now, and we need to be proud of that. We just need to get this codified in a way that works for them and for us. And I really don't want to speak for Metro Public Works either, and they could probably give us a much better feeling about what the various plausible scenarios are within their water system.
So I want to make sure, and this may be a question for Dr. Ariola or for Public Works. So for the 15 parts per billion, is there any type of danger with that 15 parts per billion? Or is that considered, I mean, my assumption is that's considered a safe level because that's our city's level.
Yeah, the 15 parts per billion is the standard for public drinking water system.
Got it.
What the health folks will tell you, Dr. Ariel included in the other experts, is that is not necessarily a health-based standard. It's there's some practical and some financial things I think weighed into how they come up with the 5 parts per billion. The ideal would be no lead in the drinking water. So the health folks are not willing to say X amount is safe or not. They want it as low as you can practically get it. There's a expert out of Virginia Tech. I want to say it's Dr. Kelly, but I could be wrong on the last name, who was actively involved in the Flint situation and doing the research up there and advising them and advising US EPA. What he has said is that given the current makeup of our plumbing infrastructure from the well to the tap and all the various pipes, the big pipes, the little pipes, the fixtures along the way, that a 5 parts per billion standard is a very rigorous standard to meet, and that in some places they will struggle to get to 5, but that it's very rigorous because of the amount of lead that is in the various components.
And I think it's worth noting also, Ms. Elrod, relative to lead, that water is not our only source of lead, that there's lead in the air we're breathing right now. That's why we have unleaded gasoline these days, because of that recognition. So, yeah, water is an important thing, and we need to make sure it's as absolutely clean as for everyone, the students and everyone, and the entire county. But we're not going to eliminate lead ingestion because we're taking it in as we speak. So.
I wanted to say something about that. When you do your research and you come back to the board with your analysis, I do want you to include water filtration, because I know that water filtration also can eliminate lead up to 99%. So that's something that I mentioned right after I became a member of the board, because this was an issue. So I want us to get some research and some information back to the board about filtration systems, especially when we have schools that have older pipes. So I just think that is important that we look into that. I know there's always a cost to it, but this doesn't justify not looking at costs, because the lead does really affect our children's brains at such a tender age. So I do want to be able to get that information so we can present that to the board.
Sure, we can certainly look at that. The one thing, just to, we're already aiming at a 5 parts per billion standard, so the incremental benefit to filtering on top of the already low levels. It's one thing if you're right at the 15 parts per billion mark or a little higher and getting down to there. The preference is to get there without the reliance on filters. So if we can get there through replacing fixtures where it's a one-time cost and we're done, we're trying to get there rather than relying on filters, which are kind of a secondary and a stopgap, and they do, on top of that, they tend to be high maintenance. So if we've tried to find ways, because of some of the downsides to filtering, to get there without the filtering, not just kind of weighing those long-term operational costs and benefits and where we're able to get without the filtering.
But we can certainly
Yeah.
supply you with some information and some potential cost out on that.
Thank you.
So do we try to make a motion then to table this, or are we just going to agree to sort of charge you guys
We'll
with?
agree to let us work on it. We will agree to bring you something.
Okay.
How about that?
All right, thanks so much. Okay, so our next topic is the fundraising activities. So Ms. Bush requested that we sort of take a look at sort of the genesis of the statement about teachers not doing online fundraising, or reminding teachers that online fundraising is not permitted based on policy. And so do you want to give a little background?
Sure, I'd be
Dr.
glad to. I think this sort of came to our attention around online fundraising, and oftentimes called crowdsourcing, or individual fundraising, or GoFundMe's, or Donors Choose, or any of the other various ways that teachers have worked to provide resources for their classroom. I think there maybe was some misperception that the district had stopped allowing that, when in fact it's this board's policy that we have never allowed employees to fundraise on their own without the express approval of the principal, and all, following the various processes. The policy you have in front of you on page 3, I believe, speaks directly to online fundraising. It is allowable as a school-wide venture under state law, assuming it meets all the various guidelines set forth in the Uniform Accounting Policy Manual. But you see there on the last page, lines 15, 16, 17, that employees have been expressly prohibited from that. There are some reasons for that. One is oftentimes, or not oftentimes, I wouldn't say that. I'd say there are times when a teacher has well-meaningly done some crowdsourcing and fundraising for items that might be technology-based, which we do not support. So it means they've wound up purchasing something when in fact it's something that they wind up being very sad that they don't get to use in their classroom. They may purchase curricula which are not aligned to the school's goals. There are other instances where the principals may have not known, and it becomes a competing venture with some other fundraising opportunity that's going on in the schools. And I think there's a very real piece around this that while Metro Nashville schools don't necessarily consider the money raised through these ventures as income, the Internal Revenue Service certainly does see these things as income. So
For the teacher.
for the teacher. So if it's being put up by the teacher, the check is being cut to the teacher, then the IRS says, you know, you got some money, because somebody on the other end is taking that off as a deduction, as a charitable donation to X teacher, right? So, and then teachers are burdened with the task of incorporating that somehow into their reported revenue or reported income. Whether they're doing that or not, we have not provided any guidance on how to do that because we've told them that we're not supposed to be doing that, right? So I think the policy as it stands provides some pretty reasonable guardrails around what teachers should be able to do. Now, we've had some very rigorous internal discussion about how would we allow this. And we think that we would need to work to set up some parameters that an organization would have to meet, rather than us like giving a laundry list perhaps of, you know, the 15 or the 8 or the 1 or the, you know, .orgs or .coms that could meet that. Just say, if you can do this, this, and this, then, and the principal knows about it and it's been approved and it's met all the other various approval mechanisms, then, you know, you could, you're not required to, but you could certainly use an online fundraising stream. Toronto Frierson from the business offices here, she actually oversees and the approval of fundraising activities in our schools. So I asked her to be here in case you had some technical questions, sort of about how the information flows. But we are kind of at a wit's end with a little bit of this, because we know that it's going on out there, and we don't want teachers to get in trouble, you know, but we don't have a mechanism for stopping it. We even know of cases where somebody's put up a site, they've been asked to take it down, and they've gone back and done it again, maybe either under a different name. I think those are isolated incidents. I don't think that's happening a lot. But we do know that it runs afoul of your policies. So we want to make sure that we are putting mechanisms in place on the procedural side that allow your policies to be put into place in a meaningful way. But if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to hear them and make policy adjustments as necessary.
Okay, we have two different sets of policies. We have the 2-page policy I think you guys have. This one is not active. We're looking at one that is active that was revised. This was revised last January. I've done a lot of research regarding this particular fundraising policy, particularly regarding Donors Choose. That is a very recognizable and much used site for teachers all over this country. They have been with Metro Schools now since 2007. We have teachers really enjoy this, Donors Choose, because they are airtight when it comes to any audits, concerns, questions. They follow our policy and procedures. They've been doing this for a long time. So I was really concerned when I received the information that it was going to be taken away from the teachers or it was going to be suspended. These teachers really do enjoy making sure their classrooms are funded without coming out of their pockets. And Donors Choose have been very, very generous on how they go about the processes and procedures on helping our Metro school teachers. So we have never really had any problems with Donors Choose. They have unfortunately been kind of clumped into the sourcing mechanism, but they're not really, they're their own entity. They are a 501c3 organization. They are a A+ rating. They go through all the IRS procedures and protocols. They've actually donated $1.2 million so far to our Metro School classrooms. And so let me just kind of go through how that works. So I had an opportunity to talk to Ben Torres, so I really wanted to make sure that everybody on the board really understood what Donor Choose does, and that it has been approved. According to our policy, it is approved. The 2.601, he did outline a few things so that we can look at together when it comes to Donors Choose. So let's go to page 2 of 3. So on online fundraising, numbers 28 through 30, it specifically spells out how this program works or how the process works. So basically, there's no exchange money to any teacher. Actually, the teacher will have to go through the process of generating, and all the teachers, they have their own online accounts with Donors Choose, but no money is transferred to the teachers. With our policy and procedures, and I'll get a chance to be able to listen to the representative here today, that the process is the teacher made the request for the classroom. If it's any material, if it's any equipment that they need in their classroom, they go to the site, they request it. We have donors all over this country that actually pour into MNPS and so many other districts. Right now we have 17 districts in the state of Tennessee that use Donors Choose, and we've had over 131 that have used it at some point, because it is a very airtight organization that follows policy and procedures. Every policy and procedure that any district has, it is uploaded on their site. So that way they will know how to follow the process and procedures. So it's never that it's so loosely, orchestrated, because it's not, because they have IRS guidelines to follow also. Also with the Comptroller's Office, Ben Torres, they work really closely with the Comptroller's Office to come up with our policies, such as this one, 2.601. So they have worked, Ben and Jennifer at TSBA, on making sure that these policies are where they need to be, so that online fundraising and organizations like Donors Choose can be utilized. So they go through the process, request it. Donors are out there looking. If they get the ding that teacher A needs chairs in her classroom, then there are a number of people that like to donate to schools that will fund or put into their likings of what teachers request. From that point on, Donors Choose works with the principal. It does not exchange monies to the teacher, and the check is made out to the principal in that particular school. No equipment ever leaves that school, none. So teachers not allowed to take the equipment, or it stays in the school. So I just want everybody to kind of understand the process. It's a little bit more to it, but I just want to kind of generalize what happens with this site. So the question is, and I want the board, because we need to make sure that we're clear on our policy and that we're following our policy, that this organization can be utilized. I've already spoken with TSBA. Ben has already clarified or basically confirmed that Donor Choose can be used. There is a policy and procedure in place for them to be used. They have been in place for all this time and never had any problems. So anybody have any questions?
So I don't think this is a discussion about whether Donors Choose is a good organization. I think it's about whether teachers are following our policy.
Yeah, and they are.
Well, so I think we have teachers that are not following our policy.
That's just hearsay.
I actually don't think it's user. I think we actually have cases
Okay.
where teachers will raise money and get equipment delivered to their school that is not with the permission of the principal, that is not compliant with what our technology needs are, that the principal has not approved. And I think that is really the question here is not whether teachers should have the right to fundraise or whether they don't. The need is certainly there. I think it is about making sure that they're following up this policy. It's not about whether donors choose is a good policy. It's about whether teachers are following our policy and principals are aware of what teachers are doing.
Well, what I would like to do is on that comment, David, I need you to come back, or you let me know what schools, who's not following policy, because that way it kind of gives me a more of an understanding. Yes, I am advocating for Donors Choose because they have been the most recognizable donor sites that is pretty much, like I said, airtight when it comes to policy and procedures. And this is one organization that's been around, MNPS, for quite some time. So I'll give you an opportunity to clarify that.
So thank you. I would say the rub comes on line 28, where it says individual schools may establish school-wide online fundraising accounts. And I think the problem comes with the word school-wide. Because if you're raising money, if you have multiple accounts within a school, then it's not school-wide, it's individualized. So, if we want to allow teachers to individually do that, then you need to be clearer in your policy about what that means. Or do we want that to all funnel through the principal? And I think there are just some decisions that need to be made around this to be protected. If we want to allow Donors Choose or any other upstanding organization that can meet the criteria to be available to educators, then we need to make sure we've got their back policy-wise. Taronda, do you have anything to add?
Yes. Hi, I'm Taronda Frierson. I'm the Director of School Audit. I did want to kind of address the concerns regarding, as you said, with teachers not following the district policy, and that's the main concern for us. We do have the responsibility of approving the fundraisers, but what we're finding out is that they're not even submitting the forms to be approved. So they're posting these projects on sites such as Donors Choose or other crowdsourcing sites that they haven't even received approval for. And we do have an instance of, even this year, of a school, Cumberland Elementary, where we did have a teacher to post a project to Donors Choose. She did receive the items. She never brought them to the school. So we did have to get in contact with the principal. That particular teacher had left Metro Schools to go to another school. We had to get the other principal involved as well to try to get those items back because, when donors are making those donations, their intention is to make it to Metro Schools. So we expect for those items to be in a Metro school and inventoried and in our system. We've also had a situation where this year as well, we had Stratton Elementary. We had a teacher to post, as he said, a project to Donors Choose. And she was asked to take it down because she hadn't got approval for it. She did take it down, but then she also submitted a second project up under a false name. The principal was not aware that she posted either project. And so we did talk to the principal did talk to the teacher. As far as if she received the items, I'm not certain. We're still looking into that as to what she requested and, if the items are at the school at this time. So we have had instances of, situations like that.
Okay, so is it because teachers are not aware of the policy? Is that what is happening? Because basically, if they're not aware of the policy, then that's something we need to tighten up a little bit more so they can understand the policy. Because we don't want them to be out there thinking, because they've heard about it and heard how great it is, that they're not following policy. So maybe that's something that is more of a gap that we need to kind of fill. But also, with that, I'm a little questionable about what, I just need to know a little bit more about that because the way their process is not that way. So you can't get the equipment without going to the school. It's delivered to the school.
Right, but if no one's checking for those items to come in, because what we were telling these particular schools is someone should be checking for those items to come into the school and checking, any mail that's coming in, any items that's coming in, someone should be checking that, not just the teacher intercepting the package. And in that instance at Cumberland, the teacher did intercept the package before anyone else did.
So then, in theory, it should arrive, be tagged, be inventoried
Absolutely.
as MNPS property before it's used by the teacher.
Absolutely.
And assuming that the principal is on board with whatever these items are.
Yes.
And normally the principal is always involved. That's not how the process works. That's why I'm questioning kind of what you're saying and I just want to make sure that I understand because that's not how it works.
Yeah,
but
I know that the principal does get an email.
Yeah.
The principal, because I've also, looked at the procedures and I've talked to Kia at Donors Choose as well. And the principal does receive an email. I did speak with, for instance, the principal at Stratton Elementary about that. And, the only answer that you really get is that they do receive a lot of emails. They may not be paying attention to the emails that's coming in. So, I think maybe if it was some kind of way also, too, that the bookkeeper was also added to that, so they are also aware that something's coming in the building, that would be helpful as well. And to address as far as, them not knowing the policy, all the bookkeepers do a in-service presentation with their staff members at the beginning of the year, where we do address fundraising policy.
Okay. So we have new teachers coming in, we have things that happen throughout the year. So
Absolutely.
if that's not being, articulated, that could be missed.
Sure.
But just like you said, I knew there was another process about not teachers just getting their equipment. It has to go through principal also. So that's another maybe fault that we have, that we're just not paying attention to things. Also, like you said, that principal just didn't read email, didn't know it was coming. But I think we could definitely. If we need to have more discussion and invite Ben Torres to come and speak, or maybe have a phone conversation, you guys, if you need to, about more clarification as far as our policy, because our policy does allow online.
I don't think it's a question of
fundraising.
the policy. I think it's a question of teachers following the policy.
Yeah, that's right. And so I would add, and I gave you, in addition to your packet that you received, you also have another loose policy that doesn't have a header. And that's because it came today, just serendipitously, and and it did come from the School Board Association. Dr. Grissom, who's the Executive Director of the School Board Association, it was really an email about Donors Choose, wasn't it? And they have been in contact with the School Board Association and just sort of letting us know that Donors Choose exists and that they are a legitimate company, organization, and that they do have a fundraising policy, and they said, click here. And lo and behold, it looks exactly like ours, except for some language we added when we went through the initial process, which are those six, numbers 1 through 6, I believe it is, yes, from page 2 to page 3. And that's MNPS specific language. But if you were to call that out and lay these two policies side by side, they would say the same thing. And, for good or bad, they both limit online fundraising to a school-wide endeavor versus a teacher-by-teacher-by-teacher endeavor. And that's, whether we get away from that, that's your decision, and we will work, along with you to give you the best policy we can based on the desires you have. But we stand ready. As I see it, you have a couple of options. One is keep everything like it is. One is to ask us to go back and do some work to create some guardrails around ensuring that we incorporate bookkeepers and principals in a more deliberate way, possibly or to open it up and let the chips fall where they may regarding IRS obligations for teachers and those sorts of things. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice what I kind of prefer on that. So having said that, but I stand ready to assist.
I just want to back up. I feel like I'm not totally up to speed, but so we've had this since 2007, and we did ban Donors Choose specifically. Did we get rid of that this year?
Well, we reiterated that the policy does not allow teachers to engage individually in online fundraising activities, to represent themselves as a part of the school. There's another side to this where people say, Mr. Severe is raising money for this child in his class who had some unfortunate circumstances, and then again, Mr. Severe is on the hook for the revenue generated. That's income that came to Mr. Severe. Mr. Severe may have turned around and given it to the young man whose house burned down or is ill or whatever, but at the end of the day, there are still IRS implications. So I think as a matter of policy, we said, maybe we shouldn't do that at all because it's going to be too tough to manage for us as a district, and and we don't want to put teachers on the, put them in a bad place for having to decide what's legally allowable under IRS guidelines.
So what happens now with Donors Choose in terms of IRS, right? Like what happens if I raised $50,000 on Donors Choose for rugs for my classroom, right? Do I get taxed on that now? Is that how that works?
Actually, it is on you, the individual. There's nothing that we would do personally to you, but yes, you would be responsible for that.
It would be similar to if you went out and started a mom and pop business and you sold stuff at the local farmer's market, and you would have income. You may not have a fancy, QuickBooks account and all that stuff, but you took cash, and by law, you're on the hook for that cash, right? This is
Even though I didn't touch the cash, I only got the rugs, right?
Rugs have value.
Right, okay.
I'm sorry, that's not accurate. I'm sorry, that's not accurate. With Donors Choose, it's not accurate. The teachers are not taxed any monies. There's no exchange money to the teachers' hands. All these donations are raised by Donors Choose, and they have donors that donate. There is an IRS process that they go through. They're 501c3. That's not true. If someone donates anything to me from a 501c3 and it's a donation, it's a donation. In this case, it's a little bit different when it comes to IRS and the comptroller, but my point of it is the teachers are not taxed. So I just want to make that clear.
The only thing that I want to kind of steer to, too, is that it seems like we're focusing more on Donors Choose. And there are more sites that, schools are using besides Donors Choose. So this whole issue is not really about Donors Choose. It's about crowdfunding in general. We have other sites that, they're asking for approval to use. And the different sites vary. Some of them are cash, some of them are items. Some of them are not 501c3. So we have a bigger issue than just Donors Choose.
Mrs. Walker, I have a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Ms. Bush, are you thinking that we need to pursue a process that says we've got this policy, let's create a list of vendors who are in compliance, so like a Donors Choose, so there isn't money coming to the teacher? I'm trying to get clear on what the ask
the reason
is.
why Donors Choose was such a big question, because we've utilized it for so long.
Right.
And that they have been very generous on donating to our classrooms' needs. And we've never had a question before up until now. So we've been using it since 2007, over a decade. So now the questions come up with Donors Choose because they were mentioned as a crowdsourcing. So that's the reason why I was focused
Specifically on them.
Yeah, and this could be other organizations. I'm not knocking them at all.
Sure.
It's just that this came up, and the fact that they had a long history with us. And it's been a long history because they've been with us for so long. And so the question was, why now? Why all of a sudden they are suspended? They're suspended on using, or teachers using the Donors Choose.
Right, so I would understand that to have happened if, we do it all the time, right? So we retrospectively, that's why we audit, right? So it's like when we do audits, it's something we've been doing for a long time. It's a process. It's grandfathered in. It's a practice that, organically becomes policy. And so, so my next question would be, have we, now that we've got a policy now, are we looking back at Donors Choose and saying they are not, that the way it functions, it potentially can leave us susceptible to a policy violation?
So
Okay.
Let me just say that this came to our attention through the guidance that was provided through the comptroller's office.
Yeah, I understand.
And so actually, I went back to our policy and said, let me look at our fundraising policy, because we actually have one. And I said, lo and behold, okay. So no, we haven't been out there, popping teachers on the head saying.
No, that's not the point of my question at all. The point of my question is, I think in all fairness, when things are brought to our attention, as several things have been brought, and we've gotten lots of media time and opportunities to loud on about that, that we are out of compliance with policy. That's been a common theme at this board table for a year. So my question is, are we now finding that we are out of compliance with policy in the use of crowdsourced funding? Because I think to Mrs. Bush's point, what has happened is we've done an Affordable Care Act Obamacare thing, right? So this is really about something bigger than Obama. So this is something bigger than just donors choose. So I guess if we can stop saying donors choose and just get back to your term of crowdsourcing or crowdfunding or whatever the right term is, so then I think the question that I would have as a teacher would be, are there vendors out there that allow me to remain compliant? Or is it really, which I think is what Mrs. Bush's question was earlier, is it really just, do we need to take an opportunity to better educate teachers on the appropriate way to use these crowdsourcing? So is crowdsourcing just a bad thing and we're never going to be right according to our policy? Or is there an opportunity to educate teachers on the policy so that they can engage with crowdsourced vendors appropriately?
I think we still will have to address the crowdsourcing, the crowdfunding, because we still have things not just related to money or, receiving items, but we also have, with a website, you have terms and conditions. You have, different clauses within those terms and conditions that the district, may not can agree to. We have met with Metro Legal, and they did assure us that they can't agree to certain terms and conditions within these websites. On top of that, we do have another source that we have in Metro Schools. It's called Online School Payment that not all of our schools use it just because some of them are kind of scared.
I know, because one day my child's not going to be able to eat lunch because y'all will not let me pay for lunch online.
Yeah, that's because it's not their food service yet.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
That's
Because
not
if
me,
I get
that's not
one more
me.
hate email saying your child is in a deficit, poor baby.
Yeah, but as far as the online school payment, that is something through student activity funds where schools could, receive donations through that source as well, and that is a Metro Schools software that we use with.
Is there a cost to the school to participate in that online payment
It's free
system?
to the school. However, the user. I don't know if you all are parents.
I use it.
And you use it to pay for like certain
Field trips.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So of course you have a 4% fee that they do charge the actual parent. But if you want to make a donation to the school, they still have to go through the process of the fundraising policy of being approved. They can post that fundraiser to that site, and a donor can still donate directly to the school, or not even online. You can just donate directly to the school with a donation letter.
Now, if I'm a teacher, though, and I want to raise for my class, that's not considered school-wide. Is that right?
I would not consider that school-wide
No.
as a school leader.
That's a different question.
Yeah.
If the teacher came to me and said, could you go on to Donors Choose and set something up because I want to take my kids to a field trip, would there be a concern for the district on that?
With Donors Choose?
Yeah, if I did it. So as a parent, if the teacher came to me and said, hey, we want to take the kids to celebrate in Gatlinburg, but we need to raise $1,000. Can you set up something on Donors Choose and raise money?
They can,
Would the district have an issue with that?
because it's not a school-wide, it doesn't follow the policy.
But I'm a parent. I don't work for the district. I'm not a teacher.
Well, according to Donors Choose, you have to be an educator.
So they really, what happens, it's more fundraising for equipment.
Gotcha.
Supplies, things like that.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't give them that personal touch at all.
Okay.
But I don't want this to be dormant. I want this to really be clarified and cleared, because the reason why Donors Choose is one of the topics or main topics and they don't like to be really crowded into the sourcing, the crowdsourcing, because that's kind of what they've been like clumped in, because it's not who they are. But so they have been, like I said, been around for so long, and it's just such a question of all of a sudden the policy's in place. TSBA has already confirmed that Donors Choose has been approved and allowed to use for our Metro school teachers, and nothing's changed. There has not been any questions about audit issues, comptroller issues. So I just want to make sure that, we just don't want to take anything else from the teachers. I mean, we want them at least to have something that they can be happy, especially not coming out of their pockets if they don't have to. And if there's some type of gap in policy that teachers are not following, that's something I think that can be cleaned up. So that not just Donors Choose, but any other recognized organization that is that's reputable and it's following policy and procedures, because that's what Donor Choose has done all this time. All these years, they followed policy and procedures. That's one of the things that Donor Choose is really great about, being so airtight with the audit purposes, is making sure that every school district uploads their information into their system. So therefore, they follow word for word what they need to do and not do with that district when it comes to the donors. So that's another thing that I felt that was definitely something that I thought was impressive, because they're just real airtight when it comes to those kind of processes and procedures. So I guess the question now is, I mean, what's the problem now? So that's what I want to know. What's the problem now?
Ms. Elrod has a question.
Okay, so it's, once again, it sounds like the problem is not necessarily Donors Choose, but obviously, even though they have our policies and they are supposed to do it the correct way, somehow they oversight that. That's not always necessarily the case, whether it's them or other groups. So it sounds like the next steps are that we need to decide what is school-wide. Is this correct?
Yep.
And that we also from here need to decide, are we going to stick to what we currently have as our process? Because yes, Donors Choose is an allowable source for fundraising, but the way that it's being done is incorrect at times.
So I would like to offer this.
Okay?
I would like to work with Dr. Narcisse and his principals, and Dr. Felder and her teacher advisory group, to talk to them about the various pros and cons of this, and be very transparent with them and very clear about all the good things that can come from it and all the potential pitfalls associated with this, and find a time over the next few weeks to get in front of a group. And I know they have groups that meet, and then come back with some type of recommendation, because I don't want to put our teachers in a pickle. I don't want to put our school leaders in a pickle. And I think that Teachers of the Year and those that serve on our various study councils and groups would be a great group to get in front of and find out more about their perspective, because we're really talking about it from a 30,000-foot view, and I want to get on the ground with some people.
And the thing of, when you do that, I need you to be really precise and accurate on the information that you come back with, because I will check, I'm going to be finding that information. So I want to make sure that the board is getting correct information, accurate information when it comes to this site and other sites. Again, it's very questionable why Donors Choose is being suspended, when there have not been anything that's been brought to the board to justify suspending that site.
I would expect no less from Dr. Sevier.
Thank you.
Hey, you have a question?
I just want to clarify, because I think we're having like back and forth about what the meeting is. The reason this all came up is because when Donors Choose went away, teachers got upset, and I think people went to the media. So
Sure.
that's why it all became a big issue around Donors Choose. I don't know, my only, again, open to discussion, but my only concern is that if we have something that's working for teachers and they really want it, how do we facilitate that? Because we have underfunded classrooms, and so I
Totally agree.
anyway. Okay, so
We'll get no
that's all I wanna say.
disagreement from this microphone.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Mr. Pinkston is not here, but we do have a representative here, and I will not try to speak for Mr. Pinkston, but I will try to sort of lay out what I believe his intention was with the very first piece in your packet, which was around our conflict of interest policy. And I know he had some interest in sort of beefing up our work around that and aligning ourselves to what the council does and other divisions of metro government. So I would ask the folks from the clerk's office to come, maybe introduce themselves and tell you sort of what that looks like and what that process looks like and how it might look here in metro schools, and let you ask some questions at least.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Elizabeth Waits. I'm the Metropolitan Clerk for Nashville and Davidson County. And just for our viewing audience, a little bit about our department, since a lot of folks don't know what we do. I know everyone's familiar with the county clerk's office because we all have to get our tags registered annually. Our office essentially operates as the city clerk, so it is a separate department. And I have, my understanding was that you all had questions surrounding both the lobbyist registrations that we do for the council, as well as information about the ethics disclosures that employees inside Metro files. I brought with me the code sections for both of those regulations, thank you, as well as my card, in case you have any questions for me afterward. So I just wanted to kind of lay out what we're talking about when we're talking about lobbyists. When we're discussing lobbyists, we're basically referring to people who are engaged by a company, a union, an industry association to discuss potential amendments or adoption of new regulations. So we're typically thinking about regulations that are drafted and adopted by legislative bodies like the General Assembly or the Council. It's important to note that employees or direct sales representatives of a company, their supervisors, attorneys inside of a company really do not fit the definition of a lobbyist. So neither do attorneys who are coming before a meeting at a school or administrative appeals processes that are necessary inside of MNPS. So attorneys also largely do not fit as lobbyists unless they're engaging in lobbyist activity. So when individuals do fit the definition of a lobbyist and are subject to the Metro regulations, we're talking about people who are hoping to influence an administrative or legislative action that's a discretionary type of action like a regulation. Those individuals must register with the Metro Clerk's office and disclose their professional ties to the clients or industry topics that they represent. Lobbyists are required to submit separate registrations for each client within 5 days of being hired. They also must submit annual reports that I'll discuss in a little bit more detail. And the registrations are uploaded onto the Metro Clerk's website. And then if anyone during the year, if anyone has anything new that needs to be updated, or if they have their engagement terminated or they withdraw from representation, then those things have to be filed and notified as well. And we do update our registration online regularly. So as it relates to people who fit the definition of executive branch officials, lobbyists are required to report any gifts or expenditures that are made on behalf of a candidate, candidate's spouse, candidate's campaign, children or staff exceeding $50, and a candidate does include an incumbent. Also, donations or gifts to exceeding $50 in an executive branch, so my notes really don't clarify exactly what the difference is there. Any campaign contribution to a Metro official that exceeds $100 throughout the course of the year. So certain conduct by lobbyists are expressly prohibited in the code, and that includes offering money of value to an official or his or her immediate family in exchange for the official taking of a particular vote or action, misrepresenting any facts to a government official, making a loan or lending a credit card to an official, or offering to purchase property or services that are offered by an official in excess of the fair market value of those goods or services. Alleged violations of that chapter of the Metro Code are filed with the Metro Clerk's office, and then I would make a determination of whether to take administrative action such as a fine or suspension of the lobbyist's registration. So I know that's a pretty quick overview, and the code has just been passed out. I know you all haven't had an opportunity to look at it, but I wanted to give you an opportunity if you have any specific questions, because I'm not aware of kind of your prior conversations or certain things that you might be interested in getting some more clarity around. So if you don't have any now, then I'll go on to discuss a little bit about the ethics disclosures that Metro officials file. The code requires employees and Metro officials not to engage in transactions or agreements that might influence them to act improperly. So this is part of the standards of conduct of Metropolitan employees, to not accept bribes and to report any attempts at bribery to the district attorney's office, not to use Metro property for personal use, not to use confidential information gained through employment improperly, not to use their position to secure privileges for themselves or others, not participate in a decision in which they have a personal or material financial interest, not provide services for compensation to a person requesting approval or action before a Metro agency, board, or commission, not engage in outside employment that conflicts with Metro or might impair their independent judgment, not advocate for the personal rights of a client before the council or any Metro board or department. And it requires individuals who are enumerated in the code to file disclosures if the person fits that class, and to avoid the appearance of being unduly influenced in the course of their duties. Employees and officials must not accept meals or gifts in excess of a $25 value from a single source in a calendar year, nor accept admission tickets in aggregate value of $100 from any single source in a calendar year. Disclosure statements are filed with our office by the individuals either outlined in the code section, and there's also an executive order adopted by the mayor that does expand some of the people who file the disclosures. The disclosures must be witnessed by a third party and filed by January 31st of the following year. Each employee is required to amend the disclosure within 30 days if there are any changes to the last filed disclosure. And our office oversees compliance of the filing processes of disclosures by sending out a notice in December to the departments to get a list of employees that fit those classes. And then we use the list to essentially contact those people individually to let them know the obligations and then follow up with them to maintain compliance. With regard to the lobbyist registrations, we send out a notice mid-year reminding the lobbyists of their reporting and registration obligations. These are for anybody who is currently registered. And then we contact anyone who's registered as a lobbyist in 2018 but failed to file the annual report. So we're in the process of going through an audit of that as well for last year's reporting. Complaints alleging violations of the standards of conduct should be submitted to an employee's supervisor or department head for anyone who's in an appointed position, and for elected officials or members of boards or commissions, the complaints are generally filed with the Metropolitan Board of Ethical Conduct, on which I serve as the secretary. I would like to note that under TCA Title 18, school boards are considered as separate governmental entities relating to ethical standards, so I would defer to the legal department regarding the ramifications of that distinction. And last, I would like to say that complaints, the lobbyist registrations, annual disclosures, benefit reporting statements, these are all public records. They're open to the public in our office. We also serve as the public records coordinator for most departments in Metro, not MNPS. So we do ensure that internal procedures are followed and that those records are available to the media, who are the most likely to request the disclosures, but to anyone who would like to look at them as well. So I'll open it up for questions about the ethics disclosures if you have any at this time, and just want to say that I'm happy to continue to answer questions as you all kind of go forward and try to figure out kind of what your objectives are and whatever standards that you might wish to implement or adopt or change.
So if we adopted some of those disclosures, whether it be the lobbyist or conflict of interest, would you, as the clerk's office, hold those, or would that be a separate entity within us at MNPS?
So it seems to me that whenever I look at the lobbyist registration code, that it makes a lot of sense for you all to not, for your administration to not have to start regulating something that's already outside of kind of your scope. And we already have something set up for that. So that is something that we could easily do if you all were to require people who are lobbying the school board, for instance, or the administration to go ahead and register. In terms of the ethical standards, then because of that Title 8 section that I mentioned, that is something that you all would have to work through pretty carefully with the legal department. So I think that question's a little bit outside of what I can answer to you.
We're going to go ahead and have to end conversation at this time. I appreciate you coming. I think
You're
when
welcome.
Mr. Pinkston's back, we will maybe revisit this now that we have this information. So really appreciate that.
I'd be happy to visit again. Thanks.
So we'll go ahead and adjourn the governance committee.
So we have a student performance, I believe.